So my name is Alex Mejia. I'm a division director here, the Division for People and Social Development, and it is my great pleasure to be the master of ceremonies of this most auspicious event, which is a pillar towards the building of a disability inclusion culture at UNITAR. This is why this is so relevant. And again, I simply wanted to welcome everyone. So without further ado, I would like to offer the floor to our Executive Director and Assistant Secretary General, Michelle Guys-Maidor. Dear Michelle.
Hello. Good afternoon, everybody. Excellency Ambassador Gallegos, my dear friends and colleagues, Mina and Megan, it is fantastic to see you online. We're here with our full team, and we also have, I think, about 29, 30 colleagues online for this second workshop. And for those who are not in this workshop, we are recording. So I'm welcoming our entire UNITAR family to this workshop. This is our first internal UNDIS workshop of the year. Our shared purpose for today is to deepen our understanding of disability inclusion within the Institute and to identify the actions we can take individually and collectively to foster a safe, inclusive workplace and enhance the experience of our training beneficiaries with disabilities. As the training arm of the United Nations, mandated to strengthen the capacities of individuals, institutions, and systems, this workshop is also about strengthening our own capacities. It is an opportunity to translate UN values and commitments into meaningful action. When we are better equipped, we're better positioned to partner effectively with beneficiaries, donors, and UN colleagues, and to raise our standards of performance in our programs, operations, and our institutional culture. Implementing the UN Disability Inclusion Strategy at UNITAR is not about compliance. It is about recognizing the barriers persons with disabilities face and working directly with them and through their networks to harness the strengths, the perspectives, and talents they bring to our work. By embedding disability inclusion across our culture, policies, programs, and operations, we can lead by example as an institute where diverse abilities are not merely accommodated, but valued as drivers of quality, innovation, equity, and impact. Our commitment to capacity development is at its core a commitment to inclusion, to ensuring access to opportunity and the ability to live dignified and productive lives. There is urgency in this work. Disability inclusion is not optional. It is a matter of human dignity, human rights, and common sense. As the Secretary General has reminded us, we can no longer be a platform for change when persons with disabilities cannot access that platform. We have a long way to go in changing mindsets, laws, and policies to ensure their rights. This is a powerful reminder that inclusion strengthens institutions and accelerates sustainable development for all. Through UNDIS, we have a clear roadmap to create accessible learning environments, break down barriers, elevate voices historically excluded from UN spaces, and to hold ourselves accountable. Inclusion is also an investment in excellence. Including persons with disabilities opens access to an untapped pool of talent and diverse skills, enabling organizations to strengthen innovation, problem solving, and competitive advantage by focusing on competencies rather than stereotypes. This was vividly demonstrated at the Tokyo 2025 Summer Deaflympics, which I spent my weekend looking at, because it showcased inclusive design drives innovation. From LED start light systems replacing starter pistols to vibration-based queuing systems and AI-powered speech-to-text services at information kiosks, improving accessibility, inclusion, and participant experience. Accessibility was not an afterthought. It was the foundation of quality participant experience. So, colleagues, today, an estimated 1.3 billion people worldwide, 1 in 6, live with significant disability. And as I've often said in my time in the field, we're all but a second away from a disability. Too many continue to face barriers created by inaccessible environments, stigma, and exclusion from education, employment, and decision-making processes. These are not abstract statistics. They represent colleagues, learners, partners, and communities whose contributions remain underutilized when systems are not designed inclusively. So let us challenge ourselves to rethink those systems, to ask better questions. How can we make every meeting accessible? How can our digital platforms anticipate diverse needs? How can we co-create new programs with persons with disabilities so that inclusion becomes not an obligation, but an opportunity to be different? In closing, I warmly thank His Excellency Ambassador Gallegos for joining us, our former board chair. Your leadership, Ambassador, including as chair of the group of states who drafted the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, has shaped the global framework that guides our work today. I also extend my appreciation to Mina and Megan. I know only too well the journey that has brought us to this day. And your experience working across the UN system and now from the Executive Office of the ASG brings invaluable insight into operationalizing UNDIS and ensuring we truly walk the talk on inclusion, dignity, and rights. Thank you both. It's early in New York. Thank you both for being with us and for your support. And colleagues, I'm confident this workshop will be time well spent. A vital step toward building a UNITAR where dignity, equity, and opportunity are not aspirations, but realities. So I look forward to this workshop. I'm going to stay with you as long as I can. I do have a plane to catch for the Global Learning Conference on the future of learning and education we will do in Kigali tomorrow. But I will stay with you as long as I can because this issue is very important to me. And I think, we really need to make sure that we can harness all the skills we need in this sustainable development journey and that we are building and enabling people to live full lives with dignity and have opportunity and choice. So let's get started.
Thank you very much, Michelle, for your leadership, for your commitment to this transformational journey that we had started last year. Now, all of you should have received the agenda by email, but those of you here in the flesh, you also have it. So allow me to continue with the proceeding now, introducing properly Ambassador Luis Gallegos. For some of you that don't know him, no, excuse me, I have to go back a little. I happen to come from the most beautiful country called Ecuador. And the person that I'm going to introduce is also from Ecuador. So if I'm biased, bear with me. Right? So I have to do some justice to the speaker that will come now. Ambassador Gallegos has been a career diplomat for more than 50 years, all the way up to serving as Minister for Foreign Affairs of the Republic of Ecuador. I met him when we were both vice ministers, and I can only attest to his capacity to lead foreign relations in the case of our country to the best, an idea. of situation. So he has been very important for what we're going to mention here. 3 times permanent representative to the United Nations in Geneva, 3 times permanent representative to the United Nations in New York, also ambassador to the White House. We will forgive you for that, ambassador. It's okay. But ambassador to the United States of America before the current administration. And let me tell you what pertains to today. He was the chair of the working group that drafted the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, the CRPD, and a very important actor in that process. Has been a vice president of the UN Human Rights Council and serves as chair of several organizations working on issues of aging or disabilities. And indeed, to conclude, but perhaps the most relevant part for us because of the legacy that he left behind, he led this organization at the highest governance level as the chairperson of the Board of Trustees of UNITAR for 6 years. So Ambassador Gallegos actually is one of us, and we are delighted that he has taken the time to come back and to address us in person. Excellency, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Alex. Thank you very much, Michelle. My regards to Mina and Megan, who we know and have worked in this field. I'm here to tell you a story. I was ambassador, as Alex said, to New York in 2002, and I was asked by the London Group to chair a committee that would analyze the possibility of having a convention for persons with disabilities. My team in New York was a very small team, as all Ecuadorian missions are. And when I asked them if we could go into a negotiation of a convention, they said we would have to duplicate them, and that was not a possibility. I went to talk to my wife, Fabiola, that night and said, you know, they are asking me to chair a convention on disability. And at the time, I was vice president of the General Assembly. I was facilitator for the reform of the Security Council. We've always been facilitating the reform of something. And I was in the board of directors of UNITAR and UNDP. So that was besides being ambassador, additional. And but Fabiola said, you know, why don't you accept the issue of disability? Who can be against disability? It is politically incorrect. You know, this will be something that I think will fly in a sense. Everybody should be morally responsible. So I went to the next thing and I accepted. In the first meetings, I ran into the United States, who did not want an international convention. And they made it very clear, because they instructed all their missions around the world to block the possibility of having a convention on disability. We had many reasons why they were in that position. It was the butcher, and we overcame the blocking of the United States after 2 years of lobbying in Washington and concerted efforts around the world. And this I have to thank the people who accompanied us and who were willing to risk going against the many capabilities that the United States has. What Michelle said is true. We are 1.3 billion people who are disabled at the moment. And you're either born with a disability or you acquire it during your life by accidents, by sickness, by war, like you see every day in our screens in Gaza or Ukraine or the 100 complex conflicts we have in the world. But when you age, like I am, you have, after 65, an 85% possibility of having a disability. There are 1 billion people who are aging at the moment, and we begin tomorrow the negotiations of a convention that will protect the dignity of persons who are aging. So I find the nexus between the two conventions very important. It is a very difficult time in the international scenario when a country like the United States is opposed to inclusion. So what we're talking about here is something very complex for people like me, who in 25 or 30 years have been talking about inclusion, including persons with disabilities, including gender, including people of minorities, including inclusion has been the word which we have used and that now has disappeared from the writings and preachings of the United States. I know this time will pass, as many times have passed. But it is a difficult time to talk about a world where you had the effects of a convention like the one we're talking about, the CRPD, the Convention on the Rights for Persons with Disabilities, because it has made a paradigm shift. It's probably the most successful convention on human rights in the United Nations realm, because this convention is a modern status where you include development, where you include many other aspects of new generation, accessibility as technology. And access to technology is probably one of the most important issues in which you can overcome the limitations of disability. At the same time, you have to look at this in the context of all of us. Because if you talk about 1.3 billion people, you're talking about an index of 2 per each. 2 persons more are directly linked to that person with a disability. Either their family or their caretaker or their medical doctor or their community, whatever, you have that impact. So it's 3.9 billion. And if you talk about aging, you talk about 1 billion by 2. And in 24 years, that is by the year 2015, there will be 2 billion people aging, which means we will be 6 billion. I might not be here. I'm 79. So the possibilities of longevity and aging are a reality. So when we talk about this with young people, we look at it from asking that you change the chip from looking at this as a segment of a minority who has a disability, rather than we can be disabled in the future. I like to use my example more than anyone else because that's the best example I know. When I was 72, an ambassador, again, for the third time in New York, I wanted a driver's license, so I went to the optometrician because I had to get a certificate. And they said, you have cataracts. We'll give it to you if you get an operation. I went to the doctor and he said, yes, we can operate. And would you like to see without glasses? And I said, I've been using glasses for 60 years. I mean, when I was 12, I'm 72. I use glasses every day. I have the rims to prove it. And he said, yeah, we can implant multifocal lenses and you can see without glasses. Ladies and gentlemen, here I am with a technology that you can see and appreciate as a reality. Because we have in front of us a dire dilemma. A dilemma of a new world that brings enormous challenges, but enormous possibilities. Artificial intelligence technology, as you see all over the world, because I just came from China, with extraordinary technologies being developed with robotics and with capabilities. Because of the fall of fertility, you have a new dilemma in world society. Where we will be in the next decades will be of importance, of crucial importance to this theme. Disability is, as Michelle said, an issue that I think that each one of us should look in the mirror. How do we react to a child with autism? How do we look at a person who has a limitation? How do we integrate them into the labor force, into the educational system, into our societies? And how do we fight for a right? Because I'll conclude by saying that inclusion is a right, a human right for all of us in a world that is tending to be of exclusion, more xenophobic, more anti-migrant, more anti-race than we would have liked to think. And therefore, we have to sit down and meditate on how people like yourselves and I will act in the next days, months, and years to overcome a very complex situation in geopolitics that will preserve the rights of persons that I have just mentioned. When I look and see a person with a disability, I look at myself in many cases and look at the possibilities they have in an order of exclusion in the world. When you meet a person with a disability, have the time to talk to him or her and measure the enormous disadvantages that they meet and the challenges they overcome every day. It is a lesson for all of us. And this is why I have to congratulate this effort by the United Nations, by Mina and Megan and all the teams who have worked on this, with all the special envoys and with all the Human Rights Council and Committee on Disability, with all the efforts that have been done in this space. And I congratulate UNITAR for this initiative because it is a basis of how the world should be. And the lesson the United Nations will teach us is how it is. If the United Nations is criticized for whatever reason you can find, having the United Nations Convention on the Rights for Disability is one of the great successes, for it has changed the lives of 1.3 billion people and the cohort they live. And I think that is to be applauded for the efforts the United Nations really stands for. Thank you.
Thank you, Excellency, for those inspiring words. I am going to continue with the proceedings, but before I introduce the moderator, let me just tell you this. Colleagues, this is an internal workshop. I have had the privilege of being 17 years with this institute, a great privilege in my career. I love it, and I love what I do. And I'll tell you that one of the things that I admire is how inclusive it has been. My journey here, this is very personal for me, has always been inclusive, motivation, embracing, positive. So if you are perhaps younger and you're engaged with the UNITAR, I assure you that this organization will be rewarding for you, and that in this journey to transform, you are a critical part of it, because you will also empower your colleagues. You will embrace your colleagues. You will accept your colleagues. You will definitely be the change. So it is important what we're doing here, because the journey is to transform the organizational culture of UNITAR to be disabilities friendly. So UNITAR can be a disabilities champion. That's why this event is important. And with that, allow me to introduce my colleague, Ms. Ana Lucia Jacome, who is the head of the team coordinating the UNDIS, the United Nations Disability Inclusion strategy here at UNITAR, and someone that I take pride in having in my team. Ana Lucia, welcome.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Morning, colleagues. I'm so happy to see you here. So the good news is that finally this day came and I found a chocolate free. That's a good start. Then to continue, it's a great pleasure to warmly welcome our colleagues from the Executive Office of the Secretary General, Mina Moshahedi. I'm so sorry, Mina. I'm getting closer every single time. She's the Disability Inclusion Team Lead. Her team oversees and supports the system-wide implementation of the UN Disability Inclusion Strategy. Nina has expertise in international human rights, non-discrimination, rights and inclusion of persons with disabilities, international development and humanitarian action, from working in organizations of persons with disabilities and other human rights and non-governmental organizations, government, academia, and international multilateral organizations. So please, Mina, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Just want to check you can hear me okay, yeah?
Yes, yes.
Great. Thank you so much, Alex and Lucia, for all your work in putting this together. It's lovely to see Michelle and Ambassador Gallegos, strong supporters of disability inclusion. So thanks for this. I just want to, give some big picture messages, and then hand over to Megan also. I'm sure you'll be introducing her, and she'll present where we are with UNDIS implementation and where we are going with it. But to kind of kick off, it's really a pleasure to be here. I joined you in the launch of the UNITAR's disability inclusion strategy. I think that was 2024. And it's really great to have UNITAR join the UNDIS family. As Michelle described, UNDIS was launched to really build the institutional capacity of us, of the UN, to deliver better support to member states in implementing this Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities and in addressing the exclusion and discrimination that persons with disabilities face. So now, it's been 20 years since the adoption of the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, that Ambassador Gallegos was sharing really fascinating stories about that time. And really what we're seeing is that in the Global South, despite all of these global challenges that we're facing, the funding landscape and pushback on equality and on diversity and inclusion, there is an increasing demand from governments in the Global South for technical support to realize the rights of persons with disabilities. We're seeing this also through the increased engagement of the UN with those governments, and UNDIS hopefully has been contributing to that. So how are we doing with the UNDIS implementation in order to meet this demand? Megan will speak a little bit about the evaluation. So we just completed, or we didn't, but the System-Wide Evaluation Office completed the independent evaluation of UNDIS on its implementation from 2019 to 2024. And it found that UNDIS really has been a catalyst for change and a driver across the UN system, and there has been significant progress. We see that also from the annual reporting that our team analyzes. At the same time, the evaluation highlighted that progress has been uneven, and I want to flag one of the key findings from the evaluation, and that was that a low level of awareness of disability inclusion and low level of capacity on disability inclusion is one of the main factors why UNDIS or disability inclusion has not made further progress. And as you will have seen also through the UNITAR's management responses to the evaluation, there are a set of recommendations really looking at knowledge management, learning, on capacity. And so as we are now in a turning point with UNDIS, we are in the process of revising the current UNDIS. A lot of all the same elements that Michelle was describing are still in the new strategy, but we have a bit more of an emphasis on capacity building and on data and evidence. And we will be looking at ways that we can support the system in this area and really address not only the capacity of the UN to better deliver, but also address one of the global challenges, and that is the lack of data on the situation of persons with disabilities. So we have included capacity building in many areas of the revised UNDIS, as well as an indicator on data and evidence, which Megan will share a bit more details. So just before I hand over to Megan, I really want to commend UNITAR on this, on the commitment, on the progress, on having this kind of an event. It's so important. And I also at the same time want to pitch a possible partnership to look at ways that we can together support the system with capacity as well as research and data. So hopefully we can continue this conversation. But with that, back to you, Ana Lucia.
Thank you so much, dear Mina Orstakieri. Yeah? We truly appreciate your valuable insights. And now it's a big pleasure to introduce our colleague, Ms. Megan Schmidt. She's a social affairs officer with the UN Disability Inclusion team. She has over 17 years of experience working within organizations of persons with disabilities and UN agencies supporting the rights of persons with disabilities at the grassroots, national and global level. In particular, her work has focused on supporting access to healthcare and the reproductive rights of women and girls with disabilities within conflict and post-conflict settings, including in Afghanistan and Cambodia. Please, Megan, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Ana Lucia, and reiterating Mina, this is a real honor to be able to present to you today, and also Ambassador Gallegos and Michelle to be in the room. It's a real pleasure. So I want to ensure that there's time for the other speakers. So I may go through these slides quite quickly, but we will be able to share them with you after the webinar. So I just wanted to go over briefly the basics of UNDIS, just in case folks are not very familiar. So the UN Disability Inclusion Strategy was launched in 2019 by the Secretary General, and it was aiming to really drive system-wide disability inclusion across all pillars of the UN. So human rights, development, peace, and security. And what it was really driving, as Mina said, was to build the capacity of the UN to better support governments to implement the CRPD and the SDGs, along with other frameworks. So UNDIS is implemented through accountability frameworks. So they include entity accountability framework, which UNITAR reports through. And this includes funds programs, secretary entities, specialized agencies, and so on. And then we also have a complementarity UN country team scorecard, which also implements the UN Disability Inclusion Strategy through all 132 country teams. So these aggregate results, these annual results and data that we receive are compiled into a Secretary General's report that is presented to member states in the third committee every year. So just to note, UNDIS is a voluntary strategy. And so when we are talking about how implementation has expanded, what we're really saying is how many entities, how much of the RC system has come on board and really seen disability inclusion as a priority. So we have now 85 UN entities reporting as of 2024. Entities are currently in the reporting cycle, so we will get 2025 data in a couple months. And this is up from 57 in 2019, so it's a significant increase. Then, of course, all 132 country teams report annually as well. So over the last 6 years, we have seen a tremendous increase in how the system implements disability inclusion. So entities are now meeting 42% of the requirements in the accountability framework. And this is up from 16% in 2019. So as you all know, for a system so broad and so disparate, we are seeing such significant progress. And equally, we see the same pattern with UNCTs. So they are now meeting 46% of the indicators, up from 24% in 2019. In 2020, which is the baseline for UNCTs. So on the screen, I know it's not very visually friendly, but we have in the latest Secretary General's report, we did a stock take of the last 5 years of progress on UNDIS. And what we have on the screen is what we call a spider graph. And so what we wanted to visualize is the progress that has been made from 2019 to 2024 for entities per indicator. So you'll see on the inner circle, those are the data points for 2019. On the outer circle, those are the data points for 2024. And so the gray area in between is meant to represent progress. Or, as you can see with joint initiatives, lack of progress. So again, I will be providing this slide deck for you to really see it properly. So we were asked to give, some basic good practices that we have really seen move the dial on disability inclusion over the last 6 years. And so leadership, embedding disability inclusion in senior management discussions, decisions, and accountability mechanisms has an incredible impact throughout all the indicators of the accountability framework. So once we have leadership on board, it really is one of the most significant factors in moving the dial on disability inclusion. And as we see in the room, UNITAR has that commitment and has that championship of the leadership. So we also see that when an entity assigns focal points or custodians across the entity, so in all the departments that the entity has, we see that it really becomes a shared responsibility. So it's not just the responsibility of one focal point or one team to do in disability inclusion, which is near impossible, but it's rather shared across the entity. And so we really see progress when entities do this. Equally, we have seen the immense progress made by really mandating disability inclusion trainings for all staff. And we have seen this because it really brings awareness across the board, no matter what your portfolio is on disability inclusion. Then we also, and this goes into what we will be covering a little bit later, but targeted capacity building to strengthen disability inclusion across certain areas of where the entity works is incredibly important. So we are now seeing, operations teams that do human resources, procurement, evaluation and monitoring. They all really need and excel when they receive targeted training. And then, of course, accessibility is essential. And so when accessibility standards are in place that ensure that communications, physical spaces, and digital platforms are accessible, this is the foundation of inclusion. So just moving on, as Mina said, we had an independent evaluation conducted in 2025, and this was done by the independent, the system-wide evaluation office in the UN. And I just wanted to draw to your attention to critical recommendations that I think UNITAR really, we would really like to partner, as Rena said, with UNITAR on these to move them forward. And so the first one, so recommendation 4.1 is on system-wide knowledge, learning, and capacity. And this is really where we are needing to see more investment in shared system-wide expertise, learning platforms, and peer exchange across entities and regions. One of the most impactful ways that we see knowledge sharing is through the peer-to-peer exchange amongst entities and country teams. We must, as I mentioned, disseminate and develop targeted system-wide guidance on priority areas. And we see these areas as lagging behind. So in areas of inclusive procurement and reasonable accommodation and employment. So the other sub-indicator that I would like to also highlight is inclusive organizational culture and accessible workplace. And this is really where we see that we need to strengthen inclusive organizational culture through accessible workplaces and effective and timely and reasonable accommodation. And, you know, Alex mentioned this, but also, you know, Michelle and Ambassador Gallegos, that UNITAR is really building and moving forward on this inclusive organizational culture. We also are very aware of the current changes happening within the UN. And so we really must leverage ongoing reforms to close those resource gaps and embed disability inclusion from the start. And this is where, you know, we cannot have disability inclusion and accessibility be seen as a extra or not a priority. This is where we must embed it. So I just want to touch upon the current revision to the UN Disability Inclusion Strategy. And we have been through multiple consultations, which UNITAR very kindly has participated in. And with this revision to the strategy and accountability framework, it is essentially based on the evaluation findings and recommendations, as I highlighted in the previous slide. And the accountability framework indicators have been tweaked and updated, but they have not been a huge overhaul of the requirements. So our ambition is to elevate the ambition of the UN system on disability inclusion, but also maintaining, you know, the progress that the system has made. So as I said, you know, the system is still not meeting 50% of the indicators. So we really want to encourage that. We are seeing that we have added new indicators, specifically, you know, disability data and evidence has been one. And this is where we are really wanting to ensure that the UN can produce effective and timely and system-wide guidance on disability inclusion in a number of areas. And so we have also introduced indicators on resource tracking, on digital accessibility, all that have been highlighted as gaps by the evaluation in the UN system. So as I mentioned, one of the fundamental actions around capacity development of staff through tailored training and learning resources and consultation of persons with disabilities have been included throughout several indicators. So we're not trying to silo these elements into one indicator. So I know that, you know, this may be a little bit technical, but we just want to provide an example of what the revised indicator looks like. And we are showing on the screen the new indicator for data and evidence. And so what this indicator is really asking for the system to do is to really produce from what they already produce, you know, within their mandates, evidence and analysis on disability inclusion. So we are wanting to see, not just quantitative data, but qualitative data, and also disaggregation of disability within, the data that the system collects already. We are also wanting, one of the key aspects that the evaluation highlighted was to ensure that while the UNDIS is building the internal capacity the internal capacity for disability inclusion amongst UN, we are also needing to ensure that, we have that external impact. So we are really wanting to ensure that the data and evidence that the UN produces has a direct impact or informs global, regional, national level processes around the SDGs and, UPRs and so on. So just to finish up, because I know this has been a bit of time, but I just want to highlight next steps. So we are continuing with annual reporting, and we were so happy to receive UNITAR's report last year, which showed a significant amount of work that you have been doing on disability inclusion. And so we are continuing to report on the existing framework for this year, and the deadline is April 15th. But as of next year, we will be asking the UN system to have a baseline assessment based on the new revised accountability framework. So we are really looking for, next year to be a baseline data set as to where the system is on the new framework. So as Mina said, we are wanting to really reinforce the focal point networks. And we are also wanting to build thematic working groups that prioritize certain topics. So whether that's, system-wide training and learning, or areas of procurement or reasonable accommodation, we are really wanting to ensure that we can support more in-depth technical guidance being produced and peer-to-peer learning. And then finally, we will be, just in terms of the revision timeline, we will be, we have submitted the draft UNDIS 2.0 to the CEB this last Friday, and pending comments and approval of the high-level committee on management and the high-level committee on programs, we will be looking at hopefully adoption of the new UNDIS 2.0 in late April. And so with that, I will hand it back to Ana Lucia. And again, thank you so much for having us.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much indeed, Megan. I decided to interject just because our executive director has really made an extra effort to be here in the flesh. She has to run to catch a flight to Kigali, and I would like to ask her to give us some final comments. But before that, rest assured that UNITAR remains committed. We look forward to going from 15 indicators to 19, and more important than anything, we indeed take this very seriously, and we will continue to train our people to make this conversation. Before Michelle goes, perhaps.
Thank you, Alex. And I think first, before I say anything, I want to actually thank my team and thank the team that's been leading this work. We also have a lot more work to do, because we also have to grow this beyond, as you say, one department, one division, and really get this across the institute. in a full and holistic manner. And I think really important, as I said in my opening remarks, and as you reiterated in probably your penultimate comment, I was listening very closely, that really this is about across the disciplines and across the work we do, dealing with this at the outset, not as an afterthought, both for its content and integration and design, but also for the efficiency reasons that Megan laid out. I'm really happy. I was eager for this evaluation of the strategy and how far we have come after about 5 years. And so now it's time for us to kind of double down. And I just want to assure, I think, as I said, we have huge internal work to do here at the Institute, but we've got a committed workforce and people who are excited about making this possible. And then just because of the role we play across the system and with member states, we already, the team will follow up with you about what we can do in terms of building the capability out at scale and with the speed that we need so that we can see even more tangible difference. Numbers in the evaluation, like going from 3% to 46%, yes, we have a long way to go, but we want to appreciate the progress that has been made in 5 years. And also what it tells us is that this is doable, this is possible. So to Mina, to Megan, and to all the colleagues, not just there in New York, but across the system who've been working with you over these last, 5+ years to get this done. We will, from the mandate we have here as well, weigh in as much as we can to help to make sure that this journey becomes much more collective, much more shared, and that we actually see some results. So thank you. I'm leaving you in, very, very capable hands. And I know that we will continue this work together. And just my huge thanks for this very big lift that you both have been carrying. I will take my leave at this moment so that
See, with promised chocolate. All right, so we'll continue with the agenda. And again, thanks to Mina and Vega for making this possible. I will give the floor back to our moderator, Lucia, for the next speaker. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex. Thank you once again, Mina and Megan. Now, let me warmly welcome our dear colleague, Sarita, who will be sharing with us the latest at our dedicated web page for the implementation of the UNDIS at UNITAR. And also she will be sharing some insights about our report in 2025 corresponding to what we did in 2024. Please, Sarita, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Ana Lucia. Hello, dear colleagues. Good afternoon, good morning to our colleagues in New York. So as we continue our journey with the UN Disability Inclusion Strategy, I have the pleasure to be sharing with you some resources that we have developed. We have a dedicated webpage that has been especially designed for the UN Disability Inclusion Strategy. So here we land on the webpage. So it's undisability.unitar.org. So here we have a sitemap that makes navigation easier. So we have all the features here outlined, and they are clustered into categories. And then we can scroll down. We have a welcome message from RED, who has just left for a flight. And this shows UNITAR's commitment to the UN Disability Inclusion Strategy. And then we have relevant data that are easily navigable as well. Background information, of course, with the UN Secretary General. We have also the learning objectives.
Our internal plan.
Yes, that. And then we have other relevant information. And this is where it all happens. So we have the useful resources. So for example, as many of you may remember, last year we were holding another workshop, which was our first internal workshop. So here you can find the recording of that workshop, for example, if you missed it. And as some of you also may remember, we have shared a survey with you all, of which the responses are also, you can find them also there. And then the important section also of this webpage is the practice section. So when you click on Start Now, sorry about the Zoom here. So here we have some resources that we have developed for the sake of making the UN Disability Inclusion Strategy a reality at UNITAR. So there's the Did You Know section, where there's useful resources that will pave the way towards the Institute being more inclusive. There's also the Challenger section, which we invite you to test your knowledge about disability awareness. And also we have other resources that you can consult whenever you please. So let me go back to the Did You Know section, where you will find the UNDIS flashcards that were developed specifically about the indicators of the entity, about the entity accountability framework. So here, when you click on let me go back just to show you again, on the flashcards, it will take you to this page where you will land here. And then when you click Start here, there will be a section for the background information, which helps explain the indicators. As you can see, they are clustered into categories. So we have leadership, strategic planning and management, inclusiveness, programs, and then organizational culture. So here we can move forward on this webpage. Here we have the 4 first indicators of the UNDIS. So we can click on the first one here just to see how it works. So here we have the front of the flashcard, where it explains what the indicator is about. So this one is about leadership. And then when you click on the plus, here we have like an outline of how we are evaluated as an entity to meet the requirements. So either if we are approaching the requirements, we are meeting the requirements, or exceeding the requirements. And then we have the back of the flashcard, where we can have suggestions on how we can strengthen our practices on that specific indicator. So here again, we have the plus sign. So we have specific recommended actions. And also we have good practices and real examples from other UN entities who have some endeavors in this UN Disability Inclusion Strategy initiative. So then we can scroll to we have all the indicators here from 1 to 15, as we reported on them in 2024. So talking about this, let me share with you some highlights that we have reported on for the year of 2024. So here for indicator 1, we have made some progress. So we are proud to say that our senior management has been championing disability inclusion. And we have, for example, held the workshop that we mentioned last year, for which some of you were present. We have also done some progress on indicator 2, which is strategic planning. So as some of you may have seen on the 2022 to 2025 strategic framework, it is aligned with both the SDGs and the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disability. And I'm going to skip some just for the sake of time. We have also made progress on indicator number 4, which is institutional setup. So as you may know, we have an assigned focal point who is our director here present for the Division of People and Social Development, who has been guiding this meaningful work. And then also indicator 6 is quite important, on which we have reported and have made progress on proudly, which is strategic planning. And so UNITAR does meet the standard requirements for accessibility, both 6 and 6.1 for accessibility standards with the WMO features for physical accessibility and with our digital accessibility features for a few of our programs. And then we have the evaluation indicator, which is indicator number 10. And here we can also mention the survey that some of you have answered last year, with some valuable insights that are now guiding our ongoing efforts to uplift our endeavors on the UN Disability Inclusive Strategy. So this has been quite a journey, and we are proud to be making progress, and thank you for all for joining and to join us in these efforts to make the UNITAR more and more inclusive.
Thank you so much, Sarita, and also with this opportunity to extend our appreciation to Megan and Mina, because they have contacted us with other colleagues from different UN agencies. They are interested in developing something similar to what we have done. So we are proud of this, and of course, with your inputs, we can improve this. Now we are going to continue with an exercise. Okay, so please pay attention. So I have a first question for you. When it comes to persons with disabilities, what is the first image that comes to your mind? Is there any future you might consider repetitive or common? Think about Google. So when you enter persons with disabilities, what is the first image that pops up? Who wants to take the floor?
Someone blind, something like that.
Someone blind.
Okay.
Anyone else? Wheelchairs. Wheelchairs.
Yes. That's the most common. So disabilities can be visible or evident or not necessarily, right? So now with this exercise, the idea is to think out of the box, okay? So picture this, it's 2033, and UNITAR is preparing to celebrate its 70th anniversary, a pivotal moment and a milestone for the Institute. After years of outreach, we have finally secured a meeting with one of the world's leading philanthropic organizations, a major international player working across multiple critical areas. Getting their attention has been a long process, but we have managed to bring them to the table. Their director has indicated that they would be open to discussing a formal partnership agreement after our anniversary conference. The philanthropic group has expressed genuine interest in UNITAR's 7 decades of work in research and capacity building. They have told us that they find our track record important and want to support our activities moving forward. To demonstrate their commitment and good faith, they have offered an in-kind contribution to help organize the conference, providing human resources to work alongside our team. This effectively launches our collaboration before any formal agreement is signed, giving both sides a chance to see how we work together. The event is shaping up to be exceptional. We have sent invitations to different stakeholders, in particular to all permanent missions, one head of state, one king, and one priestess have confirmed their attendance. The Secretary General is attending as well. We have also managed to secure the Assembly Hall at no cost, a significant achievement given current policies, as you know. It has capacity for 2,000 people. Several key donors and partners have agreed to finance portions of the event. So let's manifest this to happen indeed. This conference represents more than a celebration. It's designed as a journey through UNITAR's core achievements, showcasing the impact we have had over 70 years and demonstrating our continued relevance and potential to key stakeholders. With this level of attention, the expectations are high, and so are the stakes. There is a lot of motivation across the team to be at the top of our game, but also considerable pressure to get everything right. Let's talk a little bit about the organizing team. To deliver an event of this scale and importance, a dedicated task force has been assigned, bringing together institutional experience and different perspectives. From UNITAR, a staff from the Executive Director's Office, and the representatives from different divisions and offices, overseeing the overall organization and coordination. Plus, 2 new UNITAR colleagues who have been assigned to support the celebration as part of their onboarding to the Institute, a way for them to familiarize themselves with UNITAR's work and culture. 1 colleague with autism, level 2 out of 3, working with MDP, and 1 colleague with hearing impairments, working with SDP. From the philanthropy group, we have received 5 staff members, 1 team member with visual impairments, with a background in international affairs, 1 team member with a speech impediment, a lawyer, and 3 additional staff members. The entire team is motivated to deliver an outstanding event that, as we move forward with planning and execution, there are important considerations to address to ensure both the success of the conference and the effectiveness of our collaboration with this group and other partners. So this is the scenario. Now, let's move on to the discussion questions. First question, what do you think would be the opportunities and challenges of involving the new UNITAR colleagues and the staff from the philanthropy group in organizing this conference? First question. 70th anniversary of UNITAR. Yeah, so we are celebrating 70 years of UNITAR. And we will be having many partners, the Secretary General, 1 king, 1 princess, ambassador, all of us will be there.
Just so you know, when we celebrated the 60th anniversary, we actually had 2 head of states sitting there. Excellent case for us to ruminate and debate. And the whole idea of this, of course, is to highlight disabilities. Any comments on how we should go about?
Where will be the meeting, the event?
And the Assembly Hall at the Palais. For free.
I'm asking the questions because I think there they made a lot of efforts to make the room kind of accessible. So accessible that because you mentioned that someone with visual impairment, but they have the sign on the floor and people
The
can.
platform. True.
Yeah. If I think of the same thing here at UNITAR, I'll be a little bit difficult because there is nothing here at that we're more building that has been adapted to be accessible. I mean, that's my first.
That's very important. If you were a little far, as long as we are a little far from the microphone, our colleague, the Chief of Finance of UNITAR, so the right person to talk about investment, has reminded us, Universal Design has reminded us that indeed, for any conference of this magnitude to be successful, we need to make sure that indeed the venue is accessible. Thank you, Zhao. Very, very important. The Palais is somehow, as you say, the premises where we are now, even though this is a very modern building, not really. But that's another conversation. So that's one aspect of it, the accessibility to the conference. Any other comment or question?
I'm going to repeat the question. What do you think would be the opportunities and challenges of involving the new UNITAR colleagues and the staff from the philanthropy group in organizing the conference?
So colleagues with disabilities.
I think having someone that also has disabilities help us to see things differently, because sometimes we try to be inclusive, but it's true that if we are not the one with a disability, we may not see the whole overview. So having colleagues there is also an opportunity, not only for them, but for the potential participants that may have the disabilities, to kind of prepare the conference in a way that is accessible for everybody.
Yeah, for example, I was thinking that one of my friends that is on wheelchair, what she did in her university, she was doing a tour with the wheelchair and with a camera, filming everything and all the places that we think that they are okay, they are fine, and showing all the places that she couldn't pass by. And that was a very good experience for her, and she could show everything to the university. We can do maybe something similar to that.
Very good. You mean a sort of RPG? A role-play game?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That could be also a good idea, I think. I mean, something to show people inside the building which are their most challenges during a working day, because probably
We don't see them.
yeah, we couldn't.
Excellent, excellent. I'm using video myself. So opportunities, several challenges. Let me ask you the question directly. How do we engage with colleagues, new colleagues, that are that have disabilities that are not so apparent? Autism, in some cases, similar things. This is grade 2 out of 3. A lawyer that is hard of hearing, another person that is visually impaired. Very capable people, very capable people. Otherwise, they wouldn't be offered to us, but with a different kind of abilities. So how do we engage them? Or do we engage them normally, as I'm engaging you?
That takes us to the second question.
One second. Any comment on how to work with colleagues with disabilities? Yes.
As you pointed out, that a normal would be something very different for them, but for them it's their day-to-day life. So something as a person engaging with them would be making a conscious effort. So, for example, if you know someone has autism and has certain triggers, to avoid them, maybe that could be one way to.
May I?
Of course.
When we were negotiating the CRPD convention, we were a number of diplomats in New York from 193 missions who had no knowledge. And we were tasked with drafting and negotiating a convention instead. So we ran into the problem similarly. First of all, we needed people to teach us or explain to us what really the implications of being a disabled person were. And we did a multiple sphere of disabilities. And so we divided them in visible disabilities, which you have the wheelchair, the blind person, the person who can't hear, which are, you know, a normal interaction by society in general. The really complicated question was intellectuals, because the gamma is still something that the world is dealing with. In the conception, is it a learning disability? Is it ADD? What type? Is it a stroke? What type of Alzheimer do you have? Or do you have a mental illness? Is this an incapacity? How do you deal with these issues? So it's a very complex question, because in the majority of cases, how you adapt the workplace or adapt the scenario of the learning resource has to deal with your knowledge of what disability you're dealing with. And it can be an individual disability. I mean, the person next to you may have one, and you may have a plethora of issues. We found that it was very interesting to have the person with a disability integrated into the national delegations. But at the same time, it was extremely important to engage civil society on this, to talk to the groups who had the experience of disability. And this is something that we sat down for weeks, months, in the sense of a learning process on this issue, being in the notion of how they explained to us what their disabilities were like in order to draft this convention. And then we asked them to help us draft it in the sense of technical expertise, how you teach a person with a disability to integrate legal frameworks into their disability, so in order to have the capacity of accessibility. What does accessibility mean to these notions of what we normally learning? And I think, it's going to be 20 years of the anniversary with CRPD, and it is an everyday learning on new effects and new varieties of disability.
Thank you, Excellency. Indeed, a very valuable lesson of how the actual CRPD, the convention came to be now. The next question that Ana Lucia is going to postulate to us, I beg you to think about it and to give us examples exactly of how you think this should happen. Ana Lucia, please.
What are the tasks that you would assign to the persons with disabilities involved in the preparation of the event, both from UNITAR and from the philanthropic organization? How do you think they should be accommodated to carry out their responsibilities?
So before you reply, can you go back and tell us what happened to the lawyer?
To the lawyer.
Can you read that part? All of the colleagues are different abilities.
Yes, with pleasure. So one colleague with autism is working with MDP. His background, yes, his background is international affairs. The second colleague with hearing impairments is working with us with SDP, and he's a lawyer. Then from the philanthropy group, one team member with visual impairment, so let's say this person has a background on also international affairs, and one team member with a speech impediment, she has background in human resources.
Very good. So 4 colleagues with different abilities. How do we engage them? What tasks should we give them? Just one example. Take one and tell us. How do you think we should do that? Thank you.
Can I start with the first one, the sir with the autism? Okay, since he works for MDP, which is multilateral diplomacy, and he's a lawyer, and he's specialized in international affairs, and he has autism, I will give him something that focuses a lot on micro, like very, very particular details, which is protocol. Who should pass through where, who sit next to who, etc. The protocol.
Excellent decision. You will help us to make a resounding success of the 70th anniversary of UNITAR. But we have 3 other colleagues. So who could address another one? Yes, Joe.
Can I say something? Thank you. Why do we have to assign them special tasks? They are like any stuff. So they have to choose. It's not us to say, okay, you do this because I know you have this or you have that. But I think we have to let people to choose the task, what they want to do, what they like to do, what they don't like to do, like any other stuff. I don't like doing this, I like doing this. So why not?
Wow.
I'm just asking the question. I don't know the answer to that.
The answer is yes. As Jao knows, a director of a division, we have 21 people here and very many overseas. I sometimes forget that. I should ask preferences. But the pressure and the necessities of the job sometimes have preconceived ideas saying this person should be doing that. but I very much welcome what our Chief of Finance just said. Should indeed tangibly show willingness and inclusion, that willingness to accommodate, to ask them what you feel comfortable doing. Very much so, very much so. Any other comment? Yes.
I would just say that I agree with what you said, because I think as if you're somebody without a disability, it's your job to advocate for someone with a disability, but not to decide on their behalf. I think, yeah, like we shouldn't forget the agency of that person, and no two people with the same disability are going to necessarily need the same adjustments. So I think, yeah, I would very much agree with what you said, that it's about like honouring that agency and independence of that person.
Absolutely.
If I may say something, there is this phrase that I'm sure you have heard: nothing about us without us. So it's quite important to, first of all, identify the needs and the strengths of the team, to know your team inside, to know like what they can do, like the best thing they can do, and also the weaknesses, you know. So to take them on board as one member of the team. So that's quite important. Someone else?
Any last comment? Remember that we have chocolates.
Yes.
All right. If not, thank you very much indeed for thinking how, in practical terms, using this excellent example that Ana Lucia just gave us, how to be proactive and inclusive, as we say. So it will actually come to be. It will actually come to be. There will be a big 70th anniversary of UNITAR celebration at the Palais de la Nation at the highest level, as it was the 60th. And most of you will be there. So remember this thing when the moment comes. Very good. So with that, Aline, 3:28, I'll let you have 2 minutes to wrap up. And I simply want to say two things. Number one, the fact that this is a long journey, really. I encourage you to see this transformation of our organizational culture as something that will be evolving over time, that will imply different components. As you saw, the strategy itself will be enhanced and reinforced in the way that Megan described. So I beg you to be engaged, informed, and committed. And the second comment is something that I just discovered, and I was mentioning to Michelle in passing, and thank you, Ana Lucia, and your team. We have developed a resource, this platform, that I actually, because I saw the earlier version, today I saw the platform 2.0 for us. I wanted to tell our colleagues in New York that this platform is completely at your disposal, that we would like to use this platform to also evolve, under your guidance, of course, to evolve in order to offer training to other UN agencies. And the main reason, rather simple, is that, as you may have heard, as we speak, we are undertaking the process to merge the Staff College, the United Nations Staff College, into UNITAR. That merge will create an institution before the end of the year 2036 that will have a mandate, an enhanced mandate, and UNITAR will be responsible for providing training not only to government officials and civil society, but also to every single UN country team. This is a great opportunity, a great synergy, and I would like to kindly ask Mina and Megan to help us to understand how this platform can actually be used to train other UN agencies. So with that, I want to thank you again, and I would like to give Ambassador Gallegos the last word. But before, Ana Lucia just reminded me of something. To all of you colleagues here at UNITAR, you will be receiving an email in a couple of weeks requesting your input for UNITAR's second report on the UN Disability Inclusion Strategy. We kindly ask that you respond within the time frame indicated, and of course, we remain at your disposal if you have any questions. Remember, this is about you. This is about me. This is about us. This change will not happen without your support. So please help us when that request for information will come. And with that, Excellency, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Alex. Thank you, I need to thank all of you for your presence here today. I think that the insights from UNDIS indicated and UNITAR's first report are extremely important. It's a matter of reflection of a world that is changing at a dramatic pace, in which we are evolving into the definitions of what disability is really as a definition of the different types of disability we may all have, and we may have, and without knowing it nowadays. But this effort is an extraordinary compilance of how the United Nations leads, and I think it will be a lesson to the rest of the agencies, but also to the disability associations of the world who are willing and very likely very able to follow the guidelines of the United Nations. So congratulations and many successes in the adaptation of this inclusion strategy, which I think will be an example for all.
Thank you, Excellency. With that, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you.